Whenever I go to a Persian restaurant, and we're blessed with many good ones here in London, I always order the barbecue baby chicken. It comes with some amazing herb selection, especially the tarragon, some nuts, some feta cheese, and the chicken is always so tender and so succulent, full of flavors. You almost want to mop up everything with your bread or your rice. It's a wonderful, wonderful dish. Unfortunately, at home I don't have a charcoal barbecue, but today I want to show you my home variation of that dish on the stovetop, and it's very, very simple to make. First, we want to make the marinade for the chicken. Most of the time when you marinate meat, it's a surface treatment, meaning most things in marinades, besides salt, are not small enough to penetrate the cell membrane, and the flavors remain on the surface. Salt, through osmosis, is the only thing that travels. So when a lot of people, they add certain flavors to a brine, it's rarely worth the effort. But once you introduce acid, you change the game. That's why dishes like chicken tikka masala or a lot of Indian dishes, you can almost see the color of the spice penetrating through deep into the flesh. And that's exactly how they marinate the chicken in Persian restaurants, with yogurt and lemon juice. First things first, we deal with the saffron. So pesto multa, saffron in, and you go. You really want to powder this. Beautiful. Immediately it took on the color, and to that add some boiling water. Now this goes back into the bowl to cool down. Now for the rest of the marinade, we add some yogurt. Today I'm using Greek yogurt, which I always prefer because it has a lower acidity level, giving you more control. You can always adjust how much lemon juice you want to add, and it has very high fat content, which adds a lot of flavor during the browning process. To that, we add some very thinly sliced onion. You can grate the onion as well, but I find when you keep them sliced, it's easier to clean them off before cooking. By the way, with the marinade, I will be quite generous with the Greek yogurt, just to make sure everything gets coated. You don't have to cook all of it. So onion goes in, half is plenty. A bit of garlic, very optional. Again, we slice them quite thin. If you grate them or pass them through a garlic crusher, they burn very easily when you sear the meat. Perfect. Now, some lemon juice. We give this a mix. Perfect. Now, the bloom saffron, which has cooled down sufficiently, we add this in. That's a lot of flavor. Amazing. And that's the marinade ready to go. I prefer salting the chicken instead of the marinade, unless you want to measure it, just to have a better gauge in terms of how much salt to add. Now, the chicken. If you're using boneless, it's already good to go. But for the Pusan, I personally like to bone them out completely, just because of the short cooking time. The bones, they impart very little flavors, and I rather use the bones to make a nice stock and make it easier for the guests to enjoy. But this is absolutely optional, of course. Very generous with the salt. If you really want to measure it, I would do about 0.6% of the total weight of the boned out chicken. Again, with salt, you can always add at the very end as well, so go safe. Now, everything goes in, but be careful, like this goes on your clothes, that's game over. Perfect. Now, wrap this with cling film, and this goes into the fridge for at least 3 hours, ideally overnight, but the moment you introduce acid, it's a ticking clock. You can actually over-marinate, so overnight is the maximum. Otherwise, the acid would start to cook the meat and it will become very mushy. So, I'll see you tomorrow. After an overnight rest in the fridge, I've cleaned the chicken off the marinade, and afterwards I washed my hands for about 10 minutes. This is what we have. I've separated them with the thigh meats on one side, the breast on the other, and the 4 tenderloins, building a mini wall in the middle. Now, we're ready to cook. So, the domestic kitchen version of this, a few things to consider. Number 1, we want the caramelisation. In my opinion, there's no need for a skewer, because the purpose of the skewers in a real barbecue is actually to hang the meat and stop the meat from touching the charcoal. Number 2, to flatten the meat. But if we're doing it on the stovetop, we could easily do that and get way more skin contact and browning with a spatula. So I like to just sear them on the pan. Secondly, because we're cooking it at home, we can afford to do them in batches, do them separately, to give the thigh meat a bit more time to cook. So the collagen breaks down into very yummy gelatin, and we'll try to cook the breast meat to perfection, meaning 61 degrees Celsius. So let's do it. Of course, always a meat probe. And I'm preheating the oven to a very low setting at 60 Celsius, just to keep the chicken warm while I cook the second batch. So medium-high heat. Because of the yogurt and because we're using olive oil, you don't want to get too hot, so they burn before they caramelize. Once the pan is hot, olive oil. This is a Persian dish after all, so be generous. Swirl it around. And first, the thigh meat. Skin side down. There's not much of a sizzle, just because of the liquid content of the Greek yogurt, of the marinade. But give it a tiny bit of time, you'll hear it. The objective of the exercise here is to cause the Maillard reaction, protein's reaction to high heat. But because of the high fat content from the marinade, we want to be very careful for the chicken pieces to not burn. Now the sizzle is a little bit less gentle. We press it down with the spatula to maximize the skin's contact with the hot pan. This will, number one, help us render the fat, and number two, give us more flavor from the Maillard reaction we talked about. With the barbecue, because there's so much indirect heat, that is very easy for the skin to heat evenly. And thigh meats are way more forgiving than the breast, so you can afford to overcook it a tiny bit in exchange for good browning. This is another advantage why we boned out the chicken, because we can actually flatten the skin this way. We check on the skin side just to know where we are at. Very good fat rendering, so we'll give it a bit more time to brown. Beautiful. I can see the skin shrinking, so I suspect we have some beautiful color, but we'll give it even longer. I don't mind cooking this single-sided. If we cook the whole thing through and we get good browning out of it, we'll just flip it at the last minute for the flesh side to kiss the pan. Yeah, that's what you want to see. Now we're getting there. Look at this. Oh, beautifully caramelized. Now we probe to make sure this is above 71 Celsius. Perfect. So, perfectly cooked. Now what we'll do, we'll transfer them directly to our serving bowl. And this goes into the bottom shelf of the low heat oven to rest and keep warm. Now, breast meat, they go in. Another advantage of doing this in batches, the way we're cooking it, is that the oil is already slightly burned from the first batch of cooking, making it easier for us to brown the breast. Because remember, the breast will not get as much time, given that we want to cook it to just 61 Celsius. Look at the color. It's already taken on the color, precisely because of the fond from the previous round. It looks beautiful. Once we flip, we add the tenderloin to the edge, because they cook very quickly. Amazing. Now, we probe. We're 42, so we're getting there. Now, judging from the shrinkage, I know we're there. But again, why guess when you can test? Not yet, actually. I was wrong. See? So, because we're going to let it rest slightly in the pan, once we are 59 or 60, stove off, it will bring it to maybe 66, 67, which is within the range that we could tolerate for the chicken breast. That's it. 59.9. Stove off. We let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes while we prepare our garnish. Now, this is actually my favorite part of the whole thing, the garnish. What we like to call a herb garden. Of course, we'll serve it on the side for people to add to the dish, but I like to slice them thin and garnish the actual dish with a bit of the herbs. So, it's whatever you have, whatever it's in season. So here we have some mint. Pick a few leaves. We stack them up, roll it slightly, and we slice. So that every mouthful will have a mix of everything. Perfect. Tarragon. For tarragon, there's no need to slice. I just like to pick the leaves off. And tarragon and chicken and the saffron. It's just such a wonderful mix. Maybe next video we'll do tarragon chicken. Coriander, which we love in this household. Not too much stalk this time. As much as I love the stalks, they'll overpower the rest of the herb. And in Persian cooking, the kind of coriander they use, they're much milder in flavors anyway. But I like them sliced still. Perfect. A bit of scallion white, because why not? Again, not too much, not to overpower the rest. That's good. Basil. Oh, And if you happen to have this with a bit of roasted tomato, roasted cherry tomatoes especially, it's incredible. And the smell, oh. We roll a cigar-ish. It's important to slice the basil, by the way, not to bruise them too much. And of course, we have our radish. We'll do 2 for garnish and serve the rest just tableside. I mean, if you have a Japanese mandolin, this will be 10 times easier. Again, this is by no means authentic. It's how I like to serve it. We have some walnuts, some feta cheese, and we can plate. A well-rested chicken. And this also warms the dish, so that's perfect. Oh, it's so beautiful. Now, oh, the meat juices. Imagine that with some rice. Oh, it's like to die for. Yeah, the tenderloins. Of course, some of this wonderful jus. A tiny bit of fresh olive oil as well. Add some walnuts, crumble them a bit here and there. Bit of crumbled feta cheese. Beautiful herb garden. And you want a bit of everything, of course. Mint, the coriander, the basil. Of course, a bit of red and white. Is this as good as the charcoal version? No. But it's a wonderful, wonderful home adaptation. This is Persian-inspired saffron-marinated chicken. I really hope you enjoy.